Alright guys, welcome back to VALORANT News. Roster drama going down around the world. Big changes potentially for Team Liquid among many other teams that's happening right now. What's happening with Penny was on Liquid just a few weeks ago. Now it seems like he's on a different team over there in Europe. What is happening there? And some Scrimbux emerging from North America, especially G2 getting involved, Sen and 100T getting involved, but also Cubert Academy with a pretty good performance against the G2 roster that's looking to make amends at the World Cup in a few days' time. Very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Let's get right into it. There was a bit of drama here. So Noke FPS the other day had a 5v5 or $500 1v1 against Muda and beat him in the $500 1v1 or whatever. And then he said, I hope he pays me now. And then he says yesterday, didn't know a huge content creator would scam and no one cares about it. Never got paid. They're ghosting me, lol, him and his manager. So yeah, this got quite the traction yesterday. 1.6 million views, 23,000 likes. So yeah, don't know, just thought I'd mention it because there was some juicy drama. Weeded says, hope you get your money, bro. I hate that guy. So thought that was pretty spicy as well. That's the little drama to open up the day. We'll see where that goes from there. There was also some potential things happening in Tier 2. We've got T-Dog, who is signing some sort of contract. Eyes on the prize, no more child's play. We have Recoil, like former TSM guy, who also signed some sort of contract. And even Caillou says the same thing, let's win. So I don't really know what's happening here, where these players are going. I just thought I'd share it because when you've got 3 contract signing gifts hitting the timeline basically at the same time, there's probably something happening. Could be a team, it could be like a management company or something, but I think more than likely there's something going on there that's worthy to note. So some roster stuff to keep an eye on. There's also this I thought was pretty funny that Victoria pointed out. So Pulsar confirmed their partnership with the VCT Pacific. They talk about their, gaining invaluable insights from top-tier professional play. Whatever, I'm not going to read their little pitch. But the funny thing is, they've got sponsored teams, and their sponsored teams are T1, PaperX, and Team Secret. Now, people thought this is funny because the first event of the year back in Bangkok, who won? It was T1. The second event of the year in Toronto, who won? It was PaperX. So the third event of the year at the World Championship in Paris, it looks like Team Secret are going to win the championship. So, you know, if that's the Heretics curse, the 1-3 curse that Heretics seem to have, keep an eye on that one. Now, the other big roster drama really is around Team Liquid. Didn't have the result they wanted back at the Masters, of course, in Toronto. But they did some interesting things. They brought in Serial not long before that tournament. He started pretty badly, then kind of turned it around into the event, but it still wasn't exactly great for Serial, it's got to be said. Then, of course, they brought in Penny. They had Penny because they needed him. And then they actually confirmed that Penny was signed as a 6th man on the team, and it looked like that was going to stay. But apparently, according to what we're seeing today, that is not so true. And actually, Trexx is going to come into Team Liquid instead. So it's all been going on, of course. And Trexx, the Vitality situation and all this, it seems like he is set to join Team Liquid. And Trexx said this back in March. He said, look, since I got benched, I'm going to be taking a break, but my DMs are open. So it seems like there was Zypan and Shados, among others, that were considered for the role on Team Liquid because they're looking to replace Serial. But Trexx has been the one that's been chosen. So, yeah, very interesting developments here. Of course, they bombed out of Masters Toronto earlier than they would have hoped for, and now they're making some serious moves, and Trexx is part of the program. Now, if we look at their roster right now over in VLR, we'll still see the following. Nats, of course, Keiko, Camo, Pattytech, and Serial. So Nats was struggling to make it in time. They brought in Penny. Then after Nats was back in time, they said, okay, Penny, you can stay on as a 6th man. That was, the talking point anyway, when they talked about it. I don't know if it's mentioned exactly in this article, but when they signed Penny, they kind of confirmed that, there is still a likelihood he will stay for the longer term and be part of like a 6-man roster effectively. Pattytech, of course, after being the super sub before, he is now, maybe Penny's going to be the super sub, and we'll see that in a second. But Serial, after a difficult stint, he is set to go, and Trexx is set to come in, and we're expecting the team of 5 to therefore be Nats, Pattytech, Keiko, Camo, and Trexx. Penny, where does he go? That's a very good question, because rumour has it that, yeah, Trexx, of course, is going to be a full starter for that lineup. There's really no doubt about that. And I think that all things considered, it seems like a pretty sensible change to me to bring in Trexx at this moment in the season when Liquid needs something to kick them back up into high gear. But Penny then says, contract signs Canada to Germany. So he's on a plane to Europe. People are saying, okay, that's kind of interesting. What's happening here? Is, Liquid keeping him? Are they bringing him back? Has he now signed a longer-term contract there? What's happened? This, of course, now a couple of days ago, he tweeted this out. But apparently, according to some rumours, because he then said today, good morning Berlin, Penny's officially out there getting ready to go for whatever is happening next. And it appears whatever's happening next is actually Apex. So Penny, again, is now the new super sub, it seems. They've struggled with Simon Dark's visa to get him into Germany, and as a result, they're signing Penny. So it seems like Penny's just the ultimate guy to go and grab if you need someone to fix up your roster, and it looks like potentially Apex Penny could be a thing for the near future. This was the tweet, by the way, when apparently Team Liquid's VP of Esports clarified that Penny was not just an emergency sub, but actually was fully signed. So that's why people were kind of the opinion that, okay, yeah, looks like Penny's going to be there for some time to come. But seemingly not, and he maybe was just an emergency sub after all. Now he's gone, and there's the opportunity for Apex to get him as well. So it's all happening over there right now with this roster chaos. But tweet your thoughts in the comments. As I say, the World Cup is a couple of days away, but I did want to quickly comment on this because the Chinese group stages are just about to start. So it is, again, interesting to say the least that the other regions are starting in about 2 weeks' time. The Chinese region starts today, and in fact starts pretty much right about now as I'm recording this video. Edward versus Titan Esports is literally just getting underway. So these are your games of the first week here on July 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th. There are 6 games to come over the next couple of days. All gamers will play XLG as they try and get their first win on the board in over a year. But yeah, it's obviously going to be early days here in China, but a fair few of these teams are going to be out there in Riyadh for the World Cup, and Edward Gaming, of course, are one of them. They play pretty much right about now, and then they go away for a while, and then it comes back on July the 16th when all the other teams are also starting to play as well. So it's just like around the world. Just kind of interesting why they've done it this way, but it is what it is, to try and get some spots on the board here to make sure you're going to make it to the World Championship and of course to the playoffs in China without too much difficulty. So some teams can get some nice head starts there. But let's talk about some of the Scrimbux that we're going down, because some pretty interesting results here to mention. Some of them as follows. So we know that Cubert Academy have gone through an interesting time. I remember those tweets the Redux did during, was it Toronto? Yeah, early part of Toronto, when he was like, look, no one wants to scrim us because we're going to leak our, apparently people thought they were going to leak scrims out to the Sentinels team. I can understand why other teams would have been concerned that could have happened, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, pretty interesting to see some of the numbers here, that we've got Knight and Redux up 7-2 on somebody. We've got the Sentinels guys up 7-1 on someone or another. We also had some interesting results here. So Cloud9 were playing SAD, that was 9-5. And then Envy were playing it, well, I mean, could you believe it? Envy were playing Evil Geniuses and were 17-5 to the good here. So it's just an interesting story with Envy, of course, the former Rankers team featuring Baby J, also known as Inspire, the artist formerly known as Baby J. But Envy 17-5 up, and we heard this talk from NRG the other day that Envy are basically unbeatable in scrims. Like, the way they play is just absolutely ridiculous, completely unstoppable, and I guess we'll see whether that is set to continue, because Ascension is not a million miles away at this point. They're obviously scrimming the pro teams, and also the reality is, as an Ascension team, it pays to get good practice against the pro teams, and everyone wants to scrim Envy because people know, I mean, they don't want to scrim them because it's going to be painful, but you know that you're going to get a good scrim set in. The issue is against Envy, even NRG mentioned this, is that the way that they play in scrims, they have no respect at all. They will just chow. As a result, you can't really test too many ideas because they will just bowl them over. So sometimes Envy aren't even the greatest scrim partners ever, and they could be kind of demoralizing to your team. But, they, in practice anyway, are like one of the best teams on the planet, Envy, and they're not even in the Pro League. That's my read on it anyway. We did have a couple of other interesting results. I'll actually start with this one just real quick in EMEA. Vitality were up 9-7 on that KOI team. We also had Sentinels playing 100T. That was 12-9. So I'm fascinated to see what happens out in Riyadh, especially the 100T, because it's the first time in some time the 100T have the opportunity to do some damage at an international tournament. But I will just quickly find up the World Cup again and show you guys, because the group that they have is not exactly a pretty one, as we know. 100T play Fnatic, and they've got Gen.G and Edward also in their group. So it's not going to be easy for 100T to make it out of that group, let's be very clear on that. But maybe their scrims are preparing kind of nicely. But this was the big story, really, of the day. And it's pretty rare that you see VC scrims drop the little pie emoji here, but it's because it was 3-14, and G2 were down 3-14 to Cubert Academy, right, with Caio and those guys. So, yeah, very impressive. Also kind of interesting, because 3-4, look, if they went down 6-0, it's like, whatever, 6-0, but 3-14 is a pretty big sample size to say, okay, this was a particularly good map for Cubert and a particularly bad map for G2. Just interesting to note, really, that G2, after all the promise and the expectation going into the tournament out in Toronto, didn't deliver. There was talk about Teho, the change in the meta, understandably, but they're going to try and get out there to Riyadh and make amends, and on this evidence, it's not going to happen. But, of course, we'll see about that in due course. But very much interested your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments. Just one final thing as Terry put together here. This is boasters. Now, a boaster is when you win a map with fewer than 10 kills, and Boaster has done 6 of those out of 33 maps this season. Actually, not an especially high boaster percentage. There's other boasters who have done a better job. For example, Angel, as maybe expected, only 11 maps won recently, but 6 of those he boasted. So, yeah, maybe we should change the name of the tag. But very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.